Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Science and Sorcery's Homebrew Zoo, our very first episode. I am Dagmar, I am the homebrew expert, I guess. And today we are going to be making a playable character type that is entirely based on starfish. And in order to help me do that, or mainly to mostly do this while I sit and take notes, is our incredible Chaos Goblin producer and host of today's show, Sam Langford, and our guest, an expert on starfish and other things that live in rock pools, wonderful Elizabeth Mills.
Hello, how's it going?
My introduction. I've decided I'm the homebrew expert and you're the host. So
Okay, I'll take over.
Hmm?
That's fine, I'll just take over then. You can disappear.
I mean, I'll be here because I'll need to interrupt you occasionally, probably.
Okay.
It's like it's like pointless, Sam.
What pointless?
I'm Richard Osman.
Well, Richard, do you know what? That means that I can't get rid of you now because Richard Osman's gone from Pointless.
I'm whoever's replacing Richard Osman this week.
It's like 6 different people, so
Yeah.
like you just need to rotate in as
I'm
someone
all
different.
of them. I'll have masks.
I
At
quite
one
like
point,
being
I'm just going to do
Alexander
this and just talk as if I'm a penguin. I'll be fine. Yeah, no, happy for you two to go on and have a conversation about starfish. I'll sit here and take notes and occasionally interrupt to ask questions, possibly.
Okay. Good afternoon, folks, wherever you are watching from. As Dagmar said, my name is Sam. I'm the resident Chaos Goblin, but for the next 45 minutes, trying to be a professional scientist and science communicator. Because that's what I do. Like, I actually forget I am a professional science communicator. For this little episode here, we're going to be speaking to our wonderful guest Elizabeth about starfish and why they're awesome, why they're cool, and why they would make a really cool D&D playable species. So, Elizabeth, I'm going to come to you very, very briefly and say, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, my name is Elizabeth, but I also go by the name of Marine Mumbles, and I am a science communicator, marine biologist, massive lover and enthusiast of all sea creatures, but particularly things in rock pools. I have a YouTube channel and a website where I share the weirdest and most wonderful creatures, which is pretty much why I think starfish are a good thing to chat about, because they are wonderful and really, really weird.
So, what is it about them then that makes them so cool? Why specifically?
Lots of people think that they're like these lovely, like star things that go on the beach. Everyone loves a starfish because it's kind of like, I don't know, it's this nice idea, but actually they are like top predators on the rocky shore. They are like built to take down their prey, roam around, albeit a bit slowly, and have a really, really, really gross way of capturing their prey a lot of the time, especially here in the UK. So it's one of my favourite facts to try and, especially to tell kids that they're lovely starfish that they like actually very gross things.
So, like these lovely starfish that are actually very gross. Like, why do you want to include them in D&D? What is it you think that makes them a very good base for a character?
Well, I think it would be a very interesting character to play, given that they kind of like continually slowly crawl, and I feel like they can climb over stuff. So I just have this like comic idea of they would be really good at like getting into different places, but getting there slowly. But then when getting there, they can do some pretty gross stuff. They're like the slow and steady, but just but yeah, and also I feel like they've got a lot of arms, so we've got a lot of places that they can take weapons and hold things and just look quite comical and awesome, I think, standing up or slowly like maneuvering around. They've got like a protective side and a soft side, so I feel like that will make quite interesting gameplay of if you could attack with, you know, the protective side and see how much you could do. But, you know, if you rolled a nat 1, then, you know, you flopped over on your belly and like see what's going to happen here.
Back when we having like thoughts about how that might come in, but I think that the first thing that we should maybe just kind of clear up is that we've said the word starfish, and they're not actually fish, right? They're part of the echinodermata.
Yes.
What does that mean? What does that include?
It's one of the weirdest groups. It's like a lot of bizarre things in echinoderms, which I think is pretty cool. It also includes things called brittle stars, which look a lot like starfish, but they're inherently more useless, but also still really cool in that they get scared and they lose limbs all the time. So they're called brittle stars because that's a really cool evasive way that they will literally drop a limb and run away, which might make them more good, but I just feel that. It's also things like sea urchins, so the things that are in the ocean that are really super spiky and super protective, sea cucumbers, things like that, which are bizarre cucumber looking things that also have very weird ways of protecting themselves, and lots of stuff like that. So echinoderms are like a weird bunch, which very fascinating to like study about. Only in the ocean. Well, maybe not.
So, like it's when you said that like get scared and it just like drops a body part off. Like I just imagine like the idea of just getting a fright and your arm falls off.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a bit like that. You have to be quite careful if you're rock pooling because you like turn it over and they immediately go, oh, no, sorry, sorry, I didn't mean it.
Oh God, can you imagine if humans did that? Like anyone with an anxious disposition just like losing a toe. Like as
Walk
soon
out
as
of a
like,
horror film all limbless. I'd just be like terrified like anytime you do. But they can regrow them.
So-
That's the key point. Like they're not, they've not got five limbs to lose and then they're just a floating disc. They've got, they're like, oh, we can regrow it. Sure, we just get rid of it for now. See it in a couple of, I don't know, probably takes longer than a couple of weeks, but at least it comes back eventually.
Dagmar, were you going to say something there?
Yeah, on the topic of what the heck is an echinoderm. See, I'm not swearing yet because it is daylight. I guess. What creature type
you're
would
breaking up a little
this
bit, Dagmar.
starfish person? Oh, jeez.
You're back now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say. Well, I was just explaining why I wasn't swearing earlier. It's because the sun is still up. What kind of creature type would this starfish people be? Because that will set the tone for the other things and abilities that these creatures might have. So are you imagining they will be humanoid or fae, something else entirely? What do you think would fit best?
I'm leaning towards like not a humanoid one, like a.
I think for multiple reasons, like whether it's to do with where body parts are located and like how many limbs they have, and
yeah, I think I'm just trying to imagine a humanoid version of a starfish. My goodness. I mean, technically, if we did this and walked around like like a jumping jack, it's kind of half there. But
yeah.
I'm feeling like to fully utilize the weirdness of it, then maybe we're looking somewhere closer to like another small creature, maybe like a. It's difficult because it's like closer to like a bizarre like little like a gnome or a fairy, kind of that size, I don't know, or something like that. But
I mean, gnomes are still. Okay, I'm sorry, my phone keeps ringing. I need to take this. We will get back to this, and I will be again with you shortly.
What have you got any suggestions?
Like, well, she's not here.
Quick.
So thinking more in terms of like not a humanoid shape like a fairy or like a gnome, but like maybe something that's more kind of fiend-like or something completely different that you can come up with its own shape. That's the joy of this, is that we can start to create something brand new.
No, that would be great, especially if we can get into like limb stuff.
I'm back.
So
there are a lot of limbs. It's mainly what starfish is. So we got to emphasis on that.
Yeah, lean into the limb. So I wanted to like come on to like the size of them and what we think that would be for this creature we're trying to create, because they come in a variation of sizes and shapes with like various number of limbs. Like, how big can starfish actually get?
I was trying to find what the biggest starfish was, and I couldn't actually get like a proper thing, because I think I know that the starfish, especially like tropical ones and probably deep sea, knowing deep sea things get lots of big, can get pretty big. I'm going to make a rough estimation of like this big at very least. I did a video on my YouTube channel with people in California, someone in California rock pooling at the same time as here, and their starfish over there are huge and purple, and they're like I don't know, they're the size of a beach ball. It's like it was madness to see. It was so cool. But you also get like, I think because they kind of get bigger as they grow as well. Like I've got so many pictures on my Instagram of like a tiny starfish that's like the size of your finger as a baby, and then it gets bigger and bigger. In the UK, they're about like hand size, and then they can get even bigger with different species. But that's the kind of thing. So I don't know what would be best for.
We could say either small or medium. And then whoever's creating the character can just decide.
Yeah.
So just to finish up the creature types, because you were saying, it's more like a gnome. Gnomes are considered humanoids in D&D. So the options, it's a list: aberration, beast, celestial, construct, dragon, elemental, fae, fiend, giant, humanoid, monstrosity, ooze, plant, and undead. So that is quite the list.
Monstrosity.
Yeah.
Monstrosity.
Yeah, like, but no, I know, like that's not the right way to go with it.
No.
I think something like a fae, something a bit like that can be a bit smaller if we wanted to.
Yeah. So yeah, satyrs and centaurs and fairies and stuff are all fae. So they are the slightly stranger creatures already. And most like player type creatures tend to be humanoids / elemental humanoids or fae rather than anything else. So yeah, we can absolutely make this a fae. That will help me determine which abilities will fit best for the eventual overall creation.
What do you think, Elizabeth? Happy with that?
I think the fact that Wizards of the Coast considers the Thri-kreen, which some of you recall the praying mantis person that you played at one point, are humanoid. No. I'll tell you right now, no, they're not. That's wrong.
We've had a question: are we creating starfish people? That's exactly what we're doing.
Yes.
We are talking about they need to have star powers if they are starfish people as well as coming in. The next question that I wanted to come to was, like, we're thinking about the size, and we're thinking about how they would fit into what type of creature. And something that a lot of people forget to look at when it comes to their characters is how do they see, and can they see in the dark? So what's vision like for a starfish?
Starfish have some bizarre things. They have eyes on their legs. So some at the end, I think some on other species can be like kind of dotted around. But it's to create more of like, rather than this amazing picture, it's more to do with like working out the rough estimate, especially with like light and predators and stuff. And so it's a kind of like, I think, I don't know, from what I was reading, people can work out exactly how good their vision was, but it was somewhere in the realm of like a really good version of everything, but a bit blurry or a bit, more about light. And if you're looking at starfish as well, like if you immediately kind of pick one up and turn a rock over it, are immediately like going back down towards away from the light and stuff like that, places they can be protected if they're not off for hunting. And so I think that they've got enough vision that they know what's going on, but not enough that they could, probably be not readers.
So like not particularly perceptive of what's going on around them. Like enough to get by, but not like see the finer details.
Yeah, like they'd know if something was attacking them, but they wouldn't know.
Would it be more like they would be able to like sense the presence of a thing nearby rather than they would actually be able to make out details of it?
Yeah, I imagine they'd be very good at sensing.
Yeah, because in that case, we can give them blind sight rather than dark vision. Because blind sight tends to be limited to 10 feet in D&D anyways. But basically, it means anything, even if it's invisible within that space, you would be aware that it is there.
Well, there is the thing, though, that like some species we do reckon have really quite good vision in the dark. So like they can still see in the dark and just maybe can't see, like, as you say, couldn't read a book in the dark, but they could make out a shape.
Yeah, I imagine that's quite good for like sea creatures anyway, in that you always constantly have to be aware, like 12 hours a day is nighttime or whatever it is. You need to be always aware of what's going to eat you. You can't just like clock off at night and go to bed. So
No. So we could do 30 feet to dark vision. I mean, there isn't a distinction in D&D between being able to just see in the dark and being able to read in the dark, so they would be able to then also read. But starfish can't read anyways.
That's I mean, if you want to learn it starfish, I'm not going to
Yeah.
stop you. If you want to be a scholar and a starfish species, like
it is possible, yes. I mean, there's nothing stopping us from also giving them true sight, but if that isn't entirely how starfish work, then we shouldn't.
No.
So.
No, yeah, I feel
all
like
right. So we'll say 30 feet, dark vision to 30 feet.
But they've also got. I mean, does this matter? Isn't that like they've got, because their eyes are all the way around their body? Would you be able to make it so that they can see like all around, or is it like usually like behind them as well as in front?
So D&D doesn't really seem to account for blind spots in that way. Because it just, I think because you've got the 5 foot radius that's a medium-sized or small or medium-sized creature takes up anyways, I think the assumption is you can just turn around.
Okay.
So
yeah,
well, would we have then that they could have like say like +2 to their perception as a racial trait for being able to see around?
They could have like natural advantage on perception. Like natural or a natural proficiency on perception. That's an option.
Yeah,
I like it.
Okay, yeah. I'll make a note of that.
So they have seen this thing in the dark. They've seen a shape. They want to go to it. How do they get there? How do starfish move?
No further explanation needed. No, they have these tiny like little tube feet. So they look like little plungers. Like imagine on the bottom of a starfish, like 1,000 or more tiny little plungers, and they move them up and down really quickly and kind of really slowly move like across like this. If you watch it in real life, it doesn't look that fast, but like speed it up on a time lapse, and it's really cool. But it also means that they can stick to like any surface. It's basically like they're like, and then they can wiggle. It's probably not the most quick, it's not the most agile, but it's like a slow and steady wins the race kind of thing. Is that they've got really good suction.
So
with the updates that the Wizards of the Coast is doing to Dungeons and Dragons, it seems to be that they're going for a 30-foot movement speed for basically all creatures regardless of size. Because the updates to the, I forget what they're called, the deep gnomes. Gnomes should have a movement speed of 25 feet, but the deep gnome, the new version, has 30 feet. So we could still give them 30 feet of movement for this. Someone in the chat did suggest we give them a 5-foot climbing speed, which would be really funny, because that is just so incredibly slow. So unless you think we should cut the movement speed still, I mean, we don't need to do what Wizards of the Coast says because they don't pay us money. Unless that's changed, Sam. Are they paying us money?
Oh, I wouldn't be here if they were paying us money. We'd be on a different platform doing something else. I think that like the kind of walking speed is fine to stick with that if like everything is 30 feet. But I think like a slow climb speed is a good thing. Like it is funny. But I think that because they've got these kind of plunger and suckers that they need to be really good at climbing, even if they're slow.
So they could have a spider climb effect.
Yeah.
And I realize, I mean, obviously there's so many things we could give them, so we might need to cut some of these at the end. But they could be, because there are species, playable species for D&D which do have constant spider climb, like certain types of vampire. So we can absolutely do that.
What spider?
We can then just curtail the climb speed to like 10 feet or 15 feet per turn or something. 5 feet is perhaps maybe a little bit. So we can do 15 feet climb constants.
I just feel like there would be some really funny role play if it could only move 5 foot. like in a climb. It's like I will get there eventually.
Yeah, I mean, we could do 5 feet.
I feel like we make it even more chaotic in that we could swap it, and that if it was like walking normally, it was 5 foot, but if it was climbing on stuff, it would move really fast. It'd be like a creepy spider.
I think that would
I'm not gonna do that.
anyone who would play this type of character would die immediately in any fight. Because they wouldn't
Just
be
try and
able
get to a wall as
there,
quickly as
so
possible.
you could only play wizards who just misty step constantly.
Yeah.
No. The other question for speed is, do starfish swim?
Ooh, interesting. I don't think they do swim. You know what? Isn't that really bizarre that that's one thing I didn't even think about?
I don't know the answer either. I was hoping you would.
This is definitely not me being a proper science communicator and not Googling it.
They cannot swim.
Yeah, I imagine that I imagine they can get like brushed by current and then reattach. Like I imagine that's quite an escape route for lots of creatures, but
They
I don't
actively swim.
and they're not gonna. Yeah,
I feel like this might be groundbreaking to other people when they hear it as well.
Yeah, I didn't think they could. Yeah,
starfish don't swim. I'm writing no swim speed in all caps in my notes because of this, because that was one of the questions that I needed answered for this.
No, that's fair.
Okay.
And I assume we all know they can't fly unless you throw them at someone.
I've seen them fly all the time. What do you mean? How to get to the sky otherwise?
Because the only other type of movement that exists, I believe, is burrowing speed, but starfish tend to be on the surface, right?
Yeah.
They don't tend to burrow. Cool.
No, I do.
Perfect.
So, one thing that you kind of touched on towards the beginning, actually, is in terms of like those brittle stars that get a fright and their arm falls off. Starfish as well, they have some good regenerative properties, right? That's something they can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So they can regrow their limbs, which is really awesome. It does take them a fair bit of time, but they can do that, which is quite good and handy since they are mostly limb. And then you were saying as well, like there's a thing as well, is that they can regenerate their nerves, which is or neurons, which is a really cool thing and something that mammals are useless at. And yet the weird sea creatures are like, don't worry, I've got this. I'm just going to regrow my body parts and regrow the nerves and just be fine and dandy again.
Yeah, I was looking at this and like before we started, and there was some researchers that found that when neurons are injured, they begin to express a gene called SOX2, which causes cells to re-enter neurogenesis. It's just incredibly cool and like really cool to see that a creature can do this. And what does that actually mean if we could harness that as a potential thing to use in the future? But they're not the only creatures that can regenerate as well. Like starfish can do it. Some reptiles can do it. Like
axolotls can do it, can't they?
Axolotls can do it. Yeah, those strange juvenile
saying in the chat, fish can regenerate their spines. A fish regularly, and not my fish for some reason because they're assholes. Can regenerate lost fins as well. Mine just seem to refuse. Like they get a fin bitten off by a friend, and then they're like, "No, that's just gone now." But they can do it. So regeneration is quite relatively common.
Yeah, Nemo would be a whole different story if that was the case. Because
what we could do with this is, so you know how every character has hit dice which are tied to their class. We could do as a species effect that anytime you so we can either give a boost to constitution of some kind, though I think I'm hesitant to just give like standard, ability score improvements. I think it's more fun when people get to pick those themselves. We could do every hit dice you roll, you automatically heal the maximum, but that is quite a big boost.
So I was thinking about this instead and would be thinking along the lines of, rather than kind of like that sort of thing, whether as a species that they automatically get access to certain spells, or like a healing spells.
They
instead.
could. It would need to be a limited effect, but we could do, you know, from third level. You can cast not healing word. What's the other one? A healing spell. I'm blanking on the names. Once per short rest.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
makes more sense
Yeah.
to have that as the thing,
Mhm.
rather than a kind of constitution
Yeah.
effect or anything like that.
The other thing we could do, but this would, because this is the thing, because they are applying the healing to themselves, right?
Yep.
So we could also do that instead of casting a spell, that as a bonus action they can use a hit dice to heal.
Yeah.
Which then takes away the problem. Like if you're playing a barbarian and you're raging, you can't cast a spell. But
Yep.
if you're just using up a hit dice, then that's fine.
I feel like a barbarian starfish wouldn't even care. It would just keep fighting until it was just a
Most
distance.
barbarians are like this, but yeah, I think bonus action hit dice rather than action cast spell would be more beneficial as well. So, and then it again, just like you can do this once per long rest, probably because your hit dice reset on a long rest.
Yeah, I mean, could you? I don't know if this is actual thing in D&D, like whether you'd write it down or whether you just do it, but like, you know, if they were being attacked and they lost a limb or whatever it is, it would just didn't, you know, it just doesn't. I suppose you just play it that way when you be like, meh,
yeah,
it's but a scratch.
We can definitely make a note of that in, because we'll be able to write like a description for the character, so we'll be able to make a note in that for players and DMs. You know, if this character loses a limb, it will regrow over, you know, 6d6 days or something.
That would be cool.
I'm just enjoying some of the comments in the chat. Barbarian starfish tear off their own limbs and slap people with them.
Would that be you definitely have proficiency with that weapon?
Oh yeah,
it's part of your body.
Would it,
oh my
would
goodness,
it
the raging starfish on the tiny little like pedipalps.
I feel like it would be an alternative version of unarmed strike, because it is like you have been unarmed and then use it.
Or the literal definition of an armed strike, like nothing else is actually an armed strike except for that.
I've also got someone saying, I'd really like to see a raging starfish rushing in for an attack on their tiny feet.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Okay, in terms of other things that we wanted to get through, are starfish social creatures? Do they live in groups?
I don't think they're like socialness in terms of like needing to be social, but they congregate, I think, out of knowing the best spots, and they're happy to live in close contact. But I don't think there's like a massively social need for them to be together. They're just
technical term for this is facultatively social rather than obligate social. Archerfish are also facultatively social, so I know this. They put up with each other.
They're there but grumpy.
They have to. Yeah, they're there for the resources or something, and the mating opportunities, essentially, not the, you know, oh, you're giving me food because we're in the same place.
Yeah.
So you would think then that in terms of kind of backgrounds that we might look for any of these creatures, that they're not really going to be kind of familial with, like, not thinking about their families, or there's going to be very much a kind of a bit of a loner, but it's like fine being in groups if they have to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And would you say they'd be more likely to be like fighters and mercenaries than like craftsmen?
Ooh. Yeah, I
can see them as kind of like a mercenary, like type of people. You know, go where they're needed.
I would say that. Like, it's such a crime because they've got so many limbs that they'd be really good at crafts, but they're like, nope. So we are going to use our limbs.
This is actually a good question for any future art. Alex was going to join us drawing, but still having some technical difficulties. Do they have fingers, or are we in a Patrick Star situation?
I think we're in a Patrick Star situation, but they do have like, they can, I suppose, I'm imagining that they could like grip with the ends are quite curvy.
Because I'm just thinking, Alex in the chat is saying that they can see them being rogues, but if you don't have fingers, I think you should have disadvantage on sleight of hand checks.
But you do have a. So I was going to say, you do have a lot of like little sucky things that you could just.
That's true. That's true.
Like, you don't need fingers in order to like grip.
I guess. Okay.
I'd say it's even better if I'm honest. I feel like that you just, you could even pretend that you just walked over something like, oh, sorry, I don't mean to be stealing this, but I'm just walking along, and you just steal all the stuff as it goes past.
I do, like, in terms of like, you can see them being rogues. I can imagine like a sneak attack just taking like 2 days. Just like very slowly getting up to someone.
I feel like they would still be, given their aggressive nature, more likely to be like mercenary backgrounds rather than crafters.
Well, I desperately want to just play one now as like this
because for the background info, like we will need to. I'll probably write like a little like what kind of culture do they come from? So they're mean loners who are kind of in a mafia maybe, but like without the family aspect.
Yeah, they all just like sit together, just waiting for their turn to be able to go out and like
exactly
get all their food.
Mafia without the family aspect, like
it's just cannolis and guns.
It just sounds like a corporate. Instead, it just sounds like a corporate.
Starfish Inc.
Starfish Incorporated. Like, you get a decent wage, insurance is included. Yeah, dental.
They're like, what else are we gonna do?
Okay, other things. What eats them? Like, what's their natural enemy? What predators do they have?
It's surprising. It's like a lot of the bigger predators. So it would be stuff like octopuses or otters or dolphins, or I don't know if dolphins would. Yeah, I think they probably would, but like as a snack rather than an actual thing. But it's all of like the bigger stuff, because really on the shore they're kind of the top ones. I can imagine that maybe a big crab will try and go for them, but I don't think it's like an easy meal because they are incredibly strong. Their limbs are like the fact that they can suck onto stuff and that and getting them off of rocks and that kind of thing. So actually you're looking at like big stuff. So I don't know how that would translate into D&D.
So nothing I think that's too like naturally going to be like going for them within a D&D world.
No, I think what it could be is they could potentially have advantage on saving throws against people trying to knock them prone. If they're hard to move.
I actually have like another thought on that actually, because quite a few of the species of starfish like demonstrate positive rheotaxis, which means that they can face into an oncoming current of water. So like negative rheotaxis is something that a lot of other species do to stop themselves being dragged away. They will face away from the current, like eels will do that, but starfish will face into it, and that way they can capture anything that comes their direction and keeps them in place. So I think that could also like be part of like advantage on being pushed and shoved or being knocked prone.
Yeah, so advantage on saving throws to be moved against their will.
Yeah.
That would include being knocked prone.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have to like put something in of like if they were flipped or whatever it is, they just lose all of their. Like maybe we could do something where like if they were flipped, they'd have to like roll to be reflipped over. Like it's
like turtles.
I feel like the turtles like need to have that added into them, that if they manage to fall over, then they're fucked.
If they're prone, yeah.
Because they can like I have seen starfish like get back round, but it's not a quick thing. They have to like curl their legs under and try and like.
What we could do for that is so it usually, if you're knocked prone, it takes you half your movement speed to get up. We could do it takes them their whole movement speed.
Yeah. I think so. If they've got advantage on it, then if it goes wrong, it goes really wrong.
Moves without.
So we've got.
This is going to be so difficult to code in D&D Beyond, and I apologize in advance because it's just going to be me trying to figure out their syntax for like the next 2 weeks.
Well, you need to get it ready before 2 weeks. we've got a reason for that I can help you with if I need to.
Okay.
We've got a couple of things. Sorry?
I don't know what's happening.
Well, we have a character coming up who's maybe going to need this.
Oh, right. Yes. I forgot about that.
We've got a couple of things in the chat about like how do starfish defend themselves, which is something I wanted to ask about as well. Like you've already kind of alluded to them having to be flipped, but what do they have that stops them if they're just in place from being attacked?
They have like, so the fact that the grip is so strong and they really will just like stick to anything is kind of their main defense. But then on the other side is a much rougher, harder surface. It feels a bit like, I don't know, it kind of feels it's quite tough and slightly spiky. I think the spikes are probably more to stop stuff settling on it or like being on it all the time, like, which is irritating if they can't like get back there. So that's kind of their main defense, and like it's more about where they are, is that they would kind of stick to the corners and stick out the way. They have a really cool way that they feed, but I don't think that's a defense. I think that's mainly a way to get food.
But could it be a defense?
It could be a defense. So that the way, this is my super growth fact that I love, is that they love mussels, and so mussels are like this on the shore, and starfish obviously have loads of strong arms, and they'll go over the top of it, and then mussels have really strong muscles too, which is a terrible like essay that one of my lecturers made me write in undergrad about the muscles of mussels, and they can't get it open very much. They just get it open just a teeny weeny little bit, and that's just enough for the starfish to then throw up its stomach into the actual mussel with enzymes and acids and all this stuff, and basically slurp it back up as a smoothie. So I feel like some sort of like acid throw up blast that they could use would be a very, very D&D thing to do.
Which could be really good from like in a combat situation, but also I think if like you're all in a tavern and there's a meal comes and there's just like this, the starfish has to just like vomit first and then feed after.
Like, what? What's that?
I think we need to leave that one up to DM's discretion, Sam. We could do, so there's acid type spells, like acid arrow. I think there's an acid cantrip as well. So what we could do, let me just look up, make sure I'm not making things up. Yeah, acid splash it's a cantrip. Choose one or two creatures you can see within range. If you choose two, they must be within 5 feet of each other. Targets must succeed on a dex save or take 1d6 acid damage. We could give them this innate cantrip, essentially.
Like a mandatory cantrip, like everyone has to have that. Like,
yeah. Well, it's like tieflings have certain specific, like they like innately know certain spells as well. So this isn't beyond what is possible for D&D playable character types. And once again, I may need to retcon some of these because these are quite a lot of abilities. So I'll need to try to balance this out based on what other published content has access to. I
feel like it kind of helps that they're a bit screwed if they get flipped over, like they just lose stuff.
But everything else is pretty good. So we don't want to make something overpowered.
Okay, so let's then like get to the end and talk about what are they really bad at? Like what are they susceptible to? Because like they're really awesome, they're really cool, but surely they're threatened in some way because every species is in some sense.
Yeah, they're having a bit of a struggle with like quite a few things. They're quite an indicator if the water is not great, if there's any pollution and that kind of stuff. They're not doing very well with climate change, and there's a disease coming around that's like knocking out around the world, kind of especially in America, I think. Starfish wasting disease or something like that. That's just like really hitting them, and they think that's climate change related. So they're not doing too grand all the time, especially I think it doesn't help that they are in communal areas as well, so the diseases and anything that does hit is spread pretty rapidly. So I don't know whether that would bad constitution.
Well, we're not going to do anything with the main modifiers, I think,
sorry.
just because giving penalties to those, especially anyone who gets a negative modifier to Constitution wouldn't play a barbarian, basically,
Okay.
or a spellcasting class, because it would just be bad. I think we could do a damage vulnerability. Which isn't common, but I've definitely seen for some homebrew, like vampires and stuff, being susceptible to radiant damage, or undead, other undead types being susceptible to radiant.
There's a really good question.
Yeah, I think in the chat that's actually quite a good suggestion. Would they need to be submerged in water every day, like Lokatha or Grung?
I love it. Like, I need to find a bath. Someone just dip me in the bath.
That would be great. That would be so
we can copy that one over. The other suggestion would be we could make them vulnerable to poison damage. But again, vulnerabilities to damages, especially at early levels, can like insta-kill a character. So I don't know if that's the best way to go about it.
Well, I know that's probably not the done way, but can they become more vulnerable as they level up? So, like,
no, I don't think there would be a mechanical way to really introduce that at a certain level.
Okay.
If someone casts fear or successfully intimidates them, do they have to lose limbs?
If you get a fright, you need to lose a limb.
Yeah, that's.
I think that's okay, need to be submerged. I think if we go with needing to be submerged,
or like someone said, like need a servant that sprays them with water every day, just a familiar. Like, just comes down your lips.
A sea squirt. Just have a sea squirt living on top of them.
Lose limb.
Sea squirt familiar. Let's get that made as well.
Frightened. So probably intimidation checks, because intimidation checks against player characters tend to just they don't tend to be intimidation checks. They tend to be the frightened effect. So we can say if you become frightened, you lose one of your limbs.
Or if you get like if you roll like a natural one and any of that, you lose 2. I know that's up to the DM, but I'm just like, imagine them like losing 2.
We can make that a DM suggestion.
I immediately thought of that like then they would then just go on the forehead of the person and act as a crown if they've just got 3 left. Like, you know, like just be brought around with that.
Okay. Dagmar, anything that you're missing in terms of what's the in-game impact of losing a limb? Well, I guess it's what limb it is and like how this creature actually looks. Like, does it have an impact on their movement or?
I think that would need to be left up to the DM, probably. We can provide some suggestions. So
just imagine having one of these characters in like a long campaign, they lose a limb and then it like as it grows back, it's like it's in Deadpool and it gets like baby legs for a while. It's just
I do have actually something we haven't discussed, because again, relating to the most famous starfish of our time, Patrick Star from SpongeBob, his face is on one of his arms, right? Where are these things heads?
So anatomically,
because if it's on a limb, there is a chance you will lose your. I mean, they don't have brains, obviously. They have a central nervous system that controls.
No, I would say it's like, because their eyes are on the outside. I would say that their brain is in the middle.
Yeah.
And their mouth, because their mouth is central as well. So I'm imagining like a really small face in the middle of this body, and then their eyes are all round. So I would say that like, I'd say if you got down to like one, really, if you get down to like one leg, that's
you're just hopping.
Yeah, like because it's about losing the middle and the bits.
Yeah,
you've got 4,
I think,
but not really 5. Like
so
it can't be a circle.
Because 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons doesn't have a good mechanic for what to do if a character loses a limb. I think I might need to read up on that to see how this would actually impact things. Because as funny and realistic as it would be, I don't think there's a set mechanic for how to work with it.
I feel like the DM could I feel like the DM should do it in that sense that like
but
if you've lost
that
2, because they're good.
Yes, but there is a problem with this in that that requires the DM to either have a knowledge of Starfish or to be comfortable with DMing this kind of situation. If we want this to be more accessible to other people as well.
Could we put in the notes that like two-hand, you need 3 limbs to do two-handed weapons? You need.
Well, what I was thinking is that we are. I feel like we're going under the assumption that they have 4 limbs. Why don't they have more? Because this is like.
Oh yeah, that's true. You're right. Because some starfish have like 50, so we're really like.
Yes, again, there is a problem with this as well. Because
just let us do the cool thing, Dagmar.
Yeah, Dagmar.
One of us needs to be as realistic as possible so that other people can use this. For example, there are like types of fiends or other enemies which have 4 arms, which means they can make 4 weapon attacks. So if you have a starfish with 50 arms, would they be able to make 48 weapon attacks?
Yes.
I think there's a factor comment that losing the limb is based on hit points rather than mechanics. When you lose a limb, you lose some form of your maximum hit points.
That would be really tricky. So again, mechanically, that would be. It's not impossible. It would be very difficult to do mechanically. Especially at lower levels, would it be an equal percentage of the hit points?
I mean, this isn't a good thing for like actual starfish, but like, could you gain a limb as you level up?
You two you're just trying to make this more complicated to work into an actual. Yes, you are.
You could only do like, say you start with like 3 or something. You start with 5, probably the minimum, and then you would, but maybe you wouldn't get weapons or something. I don't know. Is that
no? But you'd be able to find or buy weapons.
Yeah.
The number of weapons you have in the game is limited by the number of limbs you have. That can hold the weapon.
If you had 20 weapons, that'd be so cool. So you're limited to 20 limbs. Just level 20 starfish is just like.
And again, like, I don't dislike Hogan's suggestion. If a single attack takes 20% of your hit points, you lose a limb. At lower levels, a single attack will easily take up to 50, if not more, % of your hit points. Which means if you're playing a level 1 or 2 starfish person, you'll just be limbless for most of it. And I just think that would take the fun out of it. The whole point with... So I understand that this is a real thing that happens to starfish. The playable character types in D&D don't have that many detrimental effects for reasons. And the reasons are you're stuck with them throughout the game.
Could you, before you start, and like dedicate, like you'd have to send to the DM what each of your 5 limbs are. Like, one is a weapon limb, one is your inventory limb, or something like that, and then you would roll to lose what one you lost. So you couldn't do too many because you wouldn't want to. If you lost your weapon limb, then you'd be weaponless for a bit.
So I feel like we could continue this discussion on limb loss in starfish for a long time, and I realize that we're getting towards the max of when we wanted to discuss. Mm-hmm. So is there anything else that you're missing, Dagmar, that you
I am not missing anything. I will think about this limb problem and report back to the 2 of you who it is most pertinent to, I believe. No, I think other than that, everything is fine. I will mock up a character description with abilities and try to balance it out.
The only thing is, can we just assume that they can, even if they're like flat down, that they can talk and be heard?
Yes, of course.
And mouth is on the underside of it.
Yeah. Awesome. And all characters can talk when they're prone. Why would this not be a thing for the thing that's mouth is in the dirt?
Fabulous.
Yeah, and I think I'm Geekoscopy in the chat is saying I would ignore the limb thing for a PC. What I absolutely can do is make you a little homebrew starfish monster of like a corrupted type of this creature, which would lose limbs. So you'd get both things, just not for the playable type, because it would be a nightmare for players and DMs. And I know that you two are both nightmare players and DMs. I assume, Elizabeth, I've never seen you DM yet. You are a bit of a nightmare player. So I know that this is your brand of chaos. I'm trying to tone down the chaos slightly to make other people want to play this.
Have you ever heard that come out of your mouth, Dagmar? Tone down the chaos?
Look, I am stone cold sober because it's only 2 p.m. So I'm speaking the truth.
And on that note, I think we'll kind of
I think there is one thing we forgot to say, which is what are these starfish people called?
We'd come up with a name, the Asteri.
Yes.
Based on the genus of sea stars, Asterias.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So keep an ear peeled for the Asteri coming to D&D Beyond and Science and Sorcery Twitter soon, and Science and Sorcery on Twitch in a couple of weeks' time. Yeah, cool. A couple of weeks, right?
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for coming to chat to us about starfish.
Yeah, thanks for helping me make starfish creatures.
Yes.
And if anybody who's watching either live or watches this back and you want to do something like this in the future, this is episode 1 of Homebrew Zoo. We want to do more of these and make more playable characters. So if you've got
monsters, spells, whatever.
Yeah. So if you have an idea or want to come on and chat to us about it as well, then please let us know. Get in touch with us at Sci and Sorcery on Twitter, and we'd love to chat to you more.
Yeah. All right. And we'll be live again on Wednesday. On Wednesday for episode 2 of Search for the Mirror. Very excited to kill Sam's character, probably.
We'll see how it goes. Okay, folks. Thank you so much for watching, for participating in the chat, and we'll see you all again very soon.
Yep. See you soon.